This is a symptom of poor financial education at school level, and this is the reason why on my previous post people are confusing state pensions and private pensions and not really knowing the difference. So let's cover some of the basics. Your state pension, everyone is entitled to, providing you have worked in the UK and contributed national insurance for a full 35 years, okay? So no matter what job you do, no matter how much you get paid, whether you are a six-figure earner or a minimum wage earner, if you contribute for the full at least 35 years, you will get the same state pension as the six-figure earner that has contributed more value in national insurance, and you'll all get the same, right? That is why it is a state pension. It's a flat rate for everyone. Now, if you contribute less than 35 years, you will receive less than the current state pension. However, in most cases, it looks like what you can do is apply for pension credits, and that will just top you up to the same amount anyway. And the reason we're all paid the same is because what you're not doing is contributing towards your pension. You are contributing towards society. So whatever the government decides they want to pay or spend the money on, the national insurance, the tax of that particular financial year, is up to them. What they don't do, which is really unfortunate, is invest it, make sure it grows like everyone would in a private pension. So the taxpayers of today, you and I, if we're going out to work and paying tax and national insurance, what we are doing is funding, or at least part funding, the current retirees, the 67 plus people drawing the state pension. They are just taking that, the tax comes in here, and that gets divvied up to all of your NHS, all of that stuff, and a part of that is the state pension. So that's how that works. If you die, under most circumstances, nobody gets anything of your state pension because there's nothing there, right? The whole premise of having a pot or something that the government steals, that doesn't exist, right? That is a made-up thing. Now, there are some nuances to that. If you're married and your spouse dies before, you may be able to get a little bit of it, but in the most part, you're not going to start receiving theirs as well as yours. Okay, now here's how private pensions differ. So private pension, usually for most people, unless you're self-employed or run your own business, when you're an employee, your employer will set up a pension supplier, provider, whatever you want to call it, right? And they will sort that out for you. And they will ask you how much contribution you want to make from your salary. Now, most companies, or all companies I've ever worked for, do this via salary sacrifice, but there are other arrangements. And that means that let's say I want to put in £500 per month before tax and national insurance from my salary every month. That goes into a pension pot, a private pension pot, which is my money, okay? So my employer is very generous, right, in this example. Then my current one isn't. And so they also put £500 into that pot. So £1,000 tax-free goes into a pension pot for me every month, okay? £12,000 a year. Do that until I retire. It's going to be a good sum of money. Now, most people's numbers are going to be higher or lower than that. That's fine. It's just an example. So that money gets invested. It gets invested in stocks, shares, bonds, all of those things. And over time, the market has proven over a good amount of time that almost always it will return more money than was invested, okay? Now, markets can go up or down, depending on when you retire, it might look different. But over a long period of time, the markets have proven to beat inflation, beat savings, all of that stuff. So any money you put in, by the time you come out 30, 40, 50 years later, will be a considerable value more, maybe 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money that was ever contributed, okay? Now, if you die before the age of 75, that pension, because you have contributed to it, because you do own that money, that will pass to your beneficiaries, either your spouse, your children, whoever you nominate with your pension provider. It will pass to them completely tax-free and outside of your estate. So it's not liable and doesn't fall into inheritance tax and stuff like that if you die before 75. If you die after 75, it still stays outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes, but the recipients will have to pay income tax usually. And there's so many nuances to this, right? Because if the beneficiaries are earning money already in the tax year, then they will pay, it was as if they earn more money that year, okay? So if you inherit £25,000 via someone's pension and you earn £25,000 that year, your taxable income for the year is £50,000, and therefore you're paid tax accordingly. But there's no special pension tax, there's no inheritance tax to be paid on pensions received because someone's died, okay? And that is the main difference. You have a lot more control of your pension. When you move companies, you can consolidate your pensions. That's what I've done various videos on that in the past. If you want more information on that, pop in the comments below and I'll do a follow-up video. But you are largely in control. You can log into your pension provider. There are many, like Legal & General. I've got one with Aegon. Like there's a few of them around, right? Or lots of them around. But your employer usually sets that up. Okay, you can log in, you can look at the funds you're invested in, and actually you can they have like cool little surveys you can click to say what your risk appetite is like, right? I want to, if you're really young, you might have a high risk appetite, which means most of your investments will be geared towards stocks and shares in actual companies. And then if you are only 5 to 10 years towards retirement, your risk profile might be lower, and therefore they're invested in something more stable like bonds and funds and stuff, okay? Things that don't fluctuate too much because they don't want the value of your pot to decrease before you retire. Now, you've got to remember that the pensions are really your responsibility at this point, the private pensions, okay? If you move companies, you need to know where the paperwork is, right? They're not just going to reach out to you if you're moving house and stuff throughout your year, because you might pay into your first pension at the age of 18 and then not retire until 68, right? That's 50 years that you are most likely to have moved house, and lots of other things. If you're female, you may have changed your name, so you could be difficult to track down, and I don't think they go to great lengths to do that. So you need to keep on top of them so you can consolidate them. As you move companies, you can ask your new pension provider whether or not you can move in your previous fund, or you can find a service or a self-invested pension, which is a SIP, and you could move it all into there so you can keep control of it. You know where it's invested and you know exactly where it is, and you only have to contact that one provider when you retire. Hopefully that's answered lots of questions. That previous video had so many people basically saying I was wrong because private pensions do get passed on, and the whole video was in response to a video on the state pension. I mentioned state pension in the text, I mentioned state pension in the caption, and I mentioned state pension in the video, and people still go to the comments saying about private pensions. So hopefully that helps and clears a bunch of stuff up. Emma, you're not the only one. It's difficult, isn't it, when people don't listen, but hopefully that clears everything up for everyone.